Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend. We're your hosts. I'm Rick Watson.
Hi, it's Jessica Lisewski. We're back. It's Friday.
Friday. Yay. We are your weekly backstage pass to retail, technology, and e-commerce circus. No clowns, but plenty of high-wire acts, mostly just us.
That's right. Lots of puns, and we probably think we're more funny than we actually are. Yeah, we're learning to juggle. We haven't dropped anything just yet.
Yeah, just give us a few minutes.
Yeah. Right. Rick, who is helping bring this wonderful piece of programming to our viewers?
Yeah, today the show is sponsored by Miracle, who's a great partner of the show. Because traditional commerce is just code for not growing. It's time to do better than the status quo. There are over 450 retailers doing better with AI, automation, and a platform built for what's next. Marketplace, dropship, and retail media all in the same platform at enterprise-grade scale. So, accelerating with Miracle. Again, we talked last week. I talked that I was at their event leading a panel discussion, which was a lot of fun. I actually got to speak with one of our guests, who was in the audience, which is a little bit of a strange appearance, the head of Marketplace at Lowe's, Michael McCluskey. So
that's right.
Thank Miracle for sponsoring this.
Reminder, yes, we are in our own version of 6 Degrees of Separation with Rick Watson. This is the retail e-commerce version. It always comes back full circle. But yes, thank you, Miracle, for helping us bring the show to you guys every week. And we've got a lot to unpack here. We have a pretty exciting guest that we're going to talk about. And then Rick has had an interview conversation with. There's lots of headline news to hit. So we're about to bring you the headline hangover and really appreciate our sponsor, Crystal, which is the smarter way to EDI. You can see why brands like Neurogum and Andy Swim love it at Crystal, CRSTL.ai.
Yeah, before I get into the first story, I do want to give a quick shout out to Crystal. Thank you for sponsoring our Headline Hangover. I had a great conversation, a recording this week with Dipti Desai, the CEO and founder of Crystal. You're going to hear that on the Watson Weekly upcoming in the next 2 weeks, so be sure to check it out. But in our first story, what's called zero click. First of all, the whole name is BS. Obviously, you had to click to get a search results. Basically, it means in Google, the first click is the click off the page. Usually Google has been trying to get you off. But zero click essentially means in the search results, AI is everywhere now. If you've been on Google and you're searching for something. And Capgemini research, they released a research study recently saying that 58% of consumers have replaced traditional search engines like Google or Bing with AI tools of one flavor. And now over a third of US citizens are actually using ChatGPT on a regular basis, according to eMarketer, which is not clear where the attribution is. And obviously, it feels to us, and I'll hear that this is a little bit different. Like the behavior that's changing here is not a fad. Obviously, ChatGPT introduced something that was super useful. Now, every time I go to Google, the results have changed.
Yes.
I think for the average retailer, it's affecting some percentage of their organic traffic. But if you're a news site who like your whole goal is to go there and like read something, and now they don't go to your site because Google has
already done the work for you. Yeah.
Repurposed their content in their AI. It's a huge deal. So what do you think is happening here?
Yeah. I mean, look, as I in my day-to-day life at work, for sure, you feel that, and you start to see some attribution showing up in the Google Analytics. And I know in this article on DigiDay where we started to surface some of this, even Commerce Tools was saying how they are changing the way that they approach looking at like their copy, how pages are tagged. The companies are now thinking about how do you optimize for these LLMs and make sure that the content you're producing is going to get surfaced, because it at least gives you some reference point, and maybe you can get a click and start to save the sale, if you will, to get traffic. These dynamics are changing, but I think it also is at the same time in my opinion, that Google results just are getting worse. If you used to, like, Google Shopping was helpful in commerce related searches. And I'm just thinking not, your information search, but just trying to buy something. And as a customer of, trying to use Google, doing basic searches for, like, I'm trying to replace some bedding, and the whole shopping results were littered with Pottery Barn. Like, there was no differentiation. It just feels like while there's a lot of focus here, some of their core is getting worse. And I wonder how that's impacting the customer experience. And is it also forcing people to spend more time on these, like, different engines, because some of the, like, traditional basics are, like, falling by the wayside. But that's one person's opinion on the show.
Yeah, I mean, search marketers clearly, I don't think they're panicking yet, but the more Google disrupts itself, there's almost a good news, bad news stories here. The good news is that you ultimately think Google is monetized by paid search, and so they can't disrupt it too much.
Yeah.
So those ads are they're coming in there.
They'll find a way.
Just because you haven't seen them yet doesn't mean they aren't on the way.
Yeah, for sure. It is happening. It's for sure one to watch. But the dynamics are interesting at play, and they will always get theirs, I think, for sure, is the moral of the story here.
Exactly.
All right. Well, in the next story here, we have the Saks Hot Mess Express. We know that Saks Global has been struggling. We've talked about it on this show many times, but they are just now in the new era of their soap opera, slapped with the "you might default" warning from the S&P. They actually got a credit rating of CCC plus. Is that good?
It sounds bad.
A's, triple C's with a plus. Like, I don't know. It's basically like, this patient is not stable.
Yeah.
They're $1.3 billion in debt, and that's coming due in the next 12 months. It feels really difficult to believe the, like, we got this message. And so I wonder if they're headed for some markdowns, of a different kind.
Ooh.
Yeah. We also have, this dynamics of luxury shoppers pulling back. We've talked a lot about the changing trends of consumers. And I think in this world of Gen Z, where they don't value ownership in the same way. And we've had Vivrel on the show, and they're successful. Nuuly is very successful in their rental model. I don't know that people want to drop $2,000 on a luxury coat that they really get kind of one play on Instagram. They'd much rather rent that and get the, benefit.
I know you have two girl to drop, Jess. Come on.
Daily, man. So yeah, anyways, what's your take on that? Like, do you think SAP got some, like, are they on life support, or have they got
I think, look, life support, the analysts are giving them very much faint praise, which is $200 million was just to help them buy inventory for the holidays. And so the big question I have is, lenders are usually taking advantage of the situation. So what do you think the interest rate on that, like, $200 million of inventory is? One, two.
Not a single. I'm going to go with not a single digit.
It doesn't have it has two digits, and it's over. The first number is possibly a 2, which is a challenge. It's almost like getting a loan from Roman and Rounders. So you just don't want to do that. So that's one. Second is the analysts are, like, faintly praising, like, well, this will get them through the holidays, but we can't, all bets are off after that. So it doesn't sound good for Saks. And it seems like, I won't say it's sort of comeuppance, but the last few years of Saks' existence has felt more like financial engineering than innovation. And so to me, that's the core of what's happening here. I mean, there are only so many luxury outlets. You sort of look at Bloomingdale's, you look at some of these places, Bergdorf's, but Saks has a place in the world if it can get its financial house in order.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know that Saks will always be Fifth Avenue, but the credit rating definitely feels like it's bargain bin.
Yeah. I mean, I watched Big Short. We were talking about that before the show. I was always taught to short the the tranche, even the AA tranche. I don't know what they say about the triple C plus.
Yes. Again, we will kind of keep tabs on this good news, bad news story for Saks.
Yeah.
I hope they got another round in them.
Yeah. In our next story, we're going to talk a little bit about the long-term effects of tariffs. So, I mean, just when you thought tariffs wouldn't go away, our president keeps bringing them back in, such that there are new tariff rates and promising coming up in August. Even this morning, I was reading a story how tariff is being threatened again with 35% tariff rates, 50% potentially in Brazil. And so even big trading partners, seems like they signed a deal with Vietnam. But ultimately, our brand's in trouble here. If you look at companies like Lululemon, who are already having issues with inventory and markdowns, a number of companies, one of the things we said at the beginning of the tariff situation is like, if you look at kind of from the start of April, you have sort of a 90-day window to sell off existing inventory before you have to land new inventory, and then you have to do something with this new inventory that costs more. Well, we're kind of in that window now. And so this quarter, you'll see quite a number of retailers either shrink their assortment or selection or depth or raise their prices. And Lululemon's is definitely one of them. So to me, that's kind of part of the story. The other thing is sort of like the American consumer doesn't really know what a tariff is. And so I'd love to pull that up now, which is, this is an Ipsos poll of 1,000 Americans. If you ask them what is a tariff, they say the tariff is imposed on imports paid by the importer. 45% of people said. Everyone else said something else, which is like it's paid by the exporting country, like China is paying tariffs. China, for the record, China's not paying tariffs. They do not. If you manufacture in China and you have to land goods and you are paying those tariffs because you manufactured in China.
That's right. You get the bill, and either you, as the company, choose to pay that bill, or you choose to pass that on to the consumer.
Yeah. Look, straight up 23% just didn't know. Like, what is a tariff? No freaking clue.
Oh, I love it. It's really fun.
So there's that. Why don't is there any early indications on Prime Day? I know we've seen a lot of data. Our friend John Shea, who's been on the program in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. There are reports that it's soft. I think there's a lot of debate about how soft it really is. Is it because it was spread over a 4-day event versus a 2-day event? We're going to unpack this more next week as we get all of the data. And we also know Target had their event. Lots of other companies like Walmart was promoting, sorts of sales as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see was the wallet distributed and people had more choice, or is it just the impact of tariffs and people feeling just the heat from a consumer macro perspective? There have been some surveys that 1 in 3 shoppers are delaying purchases because they're not sure about what's going to happen with tariffs. AlixPartners did this 2025 home delivery report where this data came through. 28% said they were panic buying. And then 22% of consumers just said they've slowed or stopped online purchases because of tariffs. So there's lots of different dynamics, as well as, hey, did you know that the stores are back? 70% of Gen Z says, hey, I'd rather shop in store.
There you go.
Not necessarily a tariff related thing, but definitely impacts online shopping, which could impact Prime Day, could impact others. So
wait, people are shopping in stores?
I know, the stores are not dead.
What happened to Agentic?
she hasn't hit the stride yet.
All right.
But yes, she might be coming, in some form of a bot that's going to guide and help you navigate through a store. We'll see.
Right.
But yeah. It is interesting to kind of look at how people are navigating this or where the information comes from. I do think that the holidays are still at risk because of the supply chain than anything else, all of this pullback and uncertainty. So I think that's what I personally am waiting to see, what's going to happen to the stock on the shelves and how does that change pricing and how does that change consumer behavior in shopping?
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. I mean, clearly we haven't seen all the shoes drop on tariffs.
Yeah.
It's like they're still going up. And so I thought we were kind of through all this, but definitely doesn't seem like so.
No, no, no. Well, Rick, we've all also got another fun one in the saga of Newsom, I guess, Trump cage match, because like the federal priority isn't like inflation, housing, AI, it's poultry politics, I guess. I'm calling this "You Have to Be Clucking Kidding Me." Yeah, I know. The Department of Justice is basically saying that California's egg laws that require like humane housing for hens and things like that are just not basically they're violating this like dormant commerce clause. So they're breaking they're breaking policy. It's going to cost families more at the table. Like they're basically the reason why egg prices are what they are. It's kind of interesting. Like, what do you take on this, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that this is a lot of feathers and no heat here. I mean, the California only supplies 10% of the U.S. supply, although about half of California's supply does come from its state itself. The Midwest, I mean, you don't think of like chicken coops when you think of California. You think of
I do.
West, like Indiana, Ohio, Iowa.
Yeah.
The corn-fed states, right? I mean, that's it. So, but I think it's interesting. I do think that this is more the administration getting back at Gavin Newsom than actually something that California did that's hurting all of our egg prices. So I guess this continues to play out.
This sure will, yeah. And in our consumer focused episode, you're going to bring the last one home here with BNPL.
Yeah, buy now, pay later. It seems like people are going to have to pay now, which is, there are new regulations upcoming where buy now, pay later will have to be reported to FICO scores, which is determined by, which is one of the biggest determining factor in your credit rating. Klarna, among other people trying to IPO, cannot be too happy about this.
No.
Nor can all the millennials who thought that this was a way to bypass getting a credit card because I can get financing for my purchase through BNP now because I don't have to ding my credit score, apply for credit. I can finance my burrito at Chipotle with BNPL. I could pay for it in these 3 short months. We all saw those memes and are anxiously awaiting their comeback. But ultimately, the buy now pay later industry, I don't think this is sort of headwinds to that. There's nothing, like, at the end of the day, there's nothing like totally unique about this. It's not reinventing finance. It's just another way to get someone money. It is trackable. I mean, the one thing that I'll have to give Klarna in their data is that like the average revolving credit window for a credit card is like, something like 4 or 5 months. For Klarna, it's really only like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so people hold the debt less, which is,
right.
It's less times you're having to pay for that burrito. But what's your take on this, Jess?
Yeah. I mean, look, we talked about this last year. We knew that the consumer strain, there was, now I think I've heard it's like $18 trillion in debt. Like there's a lot of debt out there between mortgages and auto loans and student loans and all the things. And so this was a way that people were stretching their dollars. They were starting to finance groceries. Like that was a climbing category. I do think this puts a strain on the industry as a whole, which might then hurt some other aspects like Klarna you mentioned, but like they're trying not just to be BNPL, but for sure that's what pays the bills for them. So if consumers stop paying their bills because they can't get this financing,
right.
I do think it's problematic. And we know that there's probably more debt people are carrying than's being reported because of this. So this will change the dynamics. It's going to be tricky for them to navigate. But I feel like when there's finance involved, there's always also engineering behind that. So
yeah,
there'll be workarounds invented here.
No, exactly. So that'll be a wrap for our headline hangover. Thank you for sticking with us. We have a great guest coming up, Sue Azari. I interviewed her a couple weeks back, and we recorded it. So we're gonna run it here, and I hope you really like it. It speaks to me the. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about mobile apps, particularly the use of in the brand and retailer universe. Most people think it's only about the push notice. So I think definitely this will be interesting for marketers to learn not just sort of the benefits of it, but how to make them successful, and really to be the center of your loyalty strategy. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Sue and who we'll be hearing soon?
Yeah, I mean, Sue is amazing. She's a distinguished e-commerce executive and consultant at AppsFlyer. She specializes in advising retail brands on their mobile marketing strategies, app growth, user acquisition. And we know apps are huge in sort of as far as where consumers spend their time. She's got a decade of experience in the e-commerce sector. She's had high-level roles at companies like the Very Group, Net-a-Porter, and Beauty Pie. So I know that people are really going to learn a lot from Sue, and I can't wait to unpack this interview.
Hi, and welcome. This is Rick Watson. I'm here with an interview of Sue Azari, who is really a distinguished e-commerce veteran and industry consultant at a company called AppsFlyer, where they specialize on helping retailers take advantage of app-based marketing strategies and analytics. So welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rick, for the warm welcome.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before the show, and I asked you a couple of points and would love to help unpack one of your key theses about retailers and like something that, you know, I see it in my own consulting business. We're talking about the website, we're talking about the email file, and like the app is like the 10th item on the list sometimes. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the most valuable customers are, signing up for the apps and buying from the apps. And so would love to understand, like, what do you see as a sort of a general problem within the retailers that you speak with, and why do you think that is?
I think that for a lot of retailers, like if you're looking at people who are in C-suite level and above in particular, they have come from either a completely offline world, so just bricks and mortar stores, and then they've moved into web, or they've been very used to even sort of desktop-based comms back from when they've started off in marketing. So I think it's become this new channel, which I think some businesses have, they just see it as like it's an extension of what they're doing already. Some of them haven't tapped into, okay, actually this is quite an incremental and valuable revenue channel for us. And whereas most businesses that I speak to, when I'm speaking to the marketers who are in charge of the app strategies, without fail across the world, they've all said that we see that users of the app are have a higher lifetime value, they have better retention rates, and they're just valuable as a whole. But I think the question comes into, okay, were those valuable app users born or made? Is it just a case of all users tend to download the app, and that's why we see those metrics? Or is there something about the app that's driving that value? And I can give you sort of a sneak peek into that answer, which is that I've worked my background is in e-commerce, and I've worked at a big company where we did a holdout test for 6 months of driving to the app. And the users that went on and shopped on the app over the 6-month period had a higher incremental lifetime value. So a lot of companies now are starting to see these holdout tests just to get the data points to actually prove that it is a valuable channel for them. But again, I still think that there's some retailers that are still only sort of like Charlotte Tilbury, for instance. They launched an app, I think, just about a year and a half ago now. So, and in some ways you say maybe a little bit late to the game, but actually if you look at the beauty subcategory, they're very early to it. A lot of beauty businesses don't have apps yet. So yeah, it's quite interesting mix in the space in terms of those that are a bit more forward thinking with it and those that are kind of just playing catch up with the mobile space.
You already hit on so much in your initial answer, and I couldn't agree with you more that you have these sort of people that have been doing business a certain way. They've gotten the hook that mobile is important. And so they're designing these responsive websites that look and feel great, but then understanding the app as a different thing. Like, talk to me about the tactics and strategies that are available to a mobile app that are not available because most people only think about the notification. They don't think about anything else, like the push notification I'm speaking about. And then you're like, well, that's the big issue. We don't need to talk about it after that.
Yeah. That question has made a really good point about the fact that it does need to be treated separately, because it is in its own ecosystem in a way, because you have to go through the app stores in order to download the app. And so that in itself requires such a different strategy when you're thinking about things like app store optimization. You've got other marketing channels that are unique to app, like Apple Search Ads, for instance. So you also need that expertise, whether that's in-house or via agencies, in terms of being able to run that and optimize it. And there's additional budget that's required. And then once you have the app itself, to your point, you've got an incremental marketing channel there, which is push notifications. But then you need to think really carefully about, okay, what does that strategy look like? How do we measure it? How do we opt in as many users as possible? So you need permissions to do that. You've also got a whole new world of privacy changes with post iOS 14, and you've got things like the Apple tracking transparency prompt that users need to opt into. You've got things like scan. So you need to make sure you've got the right attribution in place to measure those users who haven't opted in, so that you can send personalized remarketing. And something that I love, that I think is the coolest thing ever, but I think I'm the only one that thinks this, is you now have iOS widgets. So these can now sit on the home screen of your Apple device, and they are such a fantastic way and a free way. Obviously, your product team needs to develop it, but to have this sort of like mini live version of your app that's front and center on somebody's phone when they open it, as a way of being able to engage with your brand. So for instance, delivery use this really well. You can get live updates and tracking on your orders, for instance. Mr. Porter have a widget, so you can see live like new in products and collections. So it opens up this whole new world of communication that is very unique to the app, that you can't get through web, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, again, it feels like every answer, we're just opening up a whole bunch of new topics to, in a world where I would say a lot of retailers are recently transitioned to GA4 and are, just now fixing all the issues that come from that transition. Many of them have broken analytics on their, or broken or improperly implemented analytics on their apps. Like, what are they missing? Or is it just more of a resourcing question, or is the tagging and the structure of how the analytics works on the mobile app, should they be thinking about it differently from their technology and marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think they need to be thinking about it differently. And this is where it's really important to have the right mobile attribution in place. So when you do choose to use a mobile measurement partner, one thing that we always recommend, like when we're onboarding any new clients, is to look at what are the in-app events that you want to measure, and make sure that when you're setting up the SDK integration, that you're working as a marketer really closely with your product team. Say, okay, like, what does the user journey look like, and what are the steps that I want to be able to optimize my campaigns towards? Also, when somebody does download the app, you want to look at those full funnel metrics and say everything through, obviously, to making a purchase, but what are all the steps before that? Maybe they added to basket, search for an item, etc. So in this case, to answer your question, it's really on the marketing teams to ensure that they've got the right tech stack, that they've got the right mobile attribution in place, and they need to actually map out that user journey and decide, okay, what are the events that we want to measure, and then working closely with the product team when they are integrating with a mobile measurement partner to make sure that they've got that in place.
Got it. I mean, I do feel like many retailers are not prepared to understand, even just talking about the new user journey in an app. I mean, you think about something obvious that everyone does, is like go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a very structured journey for like, how do they get people to engage with you? They're having you like add in your contacts, engage your network. They want you to post something. They want you to update your profile. Is there, I won't say a playbook, but are there like topic areas that companies should think about for the, like, even if we just zero in on the new user journey for people?
Yeah, so the onboarding journey in particular is extremely crucial. I'm seeing a lot more e-com businesses optimized towards day one registration or login rates.
Mm.
The reason for that being that
day one registration or login rates. Can you unpack that?
So if somebody was to install the app today, that would be day 0, and then day 1 is tomorrow. So say you get 100 people who download the app today, they might have a target and say, okay, we want at least 40% of those on day 1 to have either logged into their account when they download the app, or maybe they have an account on web. So then log in via the app with the same details, or to register if they're a completely new user. There's a few reasons for this. A lot of the retailers that I've spoken to have said that they use this as a proxy for lifetime value, because they've seen from the data, they look at all of the actions that somebody will take on day 1 after installing an app. And if somebody registers or logs in, they're like X times more likely to then go on and make a purchase within the first 30 days. So that a lot of activities now are starting to gear towards, okay, how can we get users to take those new users to take that action as part of their onboarding journey for the app? And that's where, because there's so many metrics that you can influence, but just honing in on that one, that means that they can work very closely on like testing iterations, like how can they drive up that login and registration rate as much as they can within that day 1 post install. But then again, it's really about we talked about push, like really trying to influence the push opt-in rate as much as you can. So having that really best practice onboarding journey. There's some businesses like Elf Beauty I've seen, they've got a really fantastic loyalty program, and you can earn loyalty points through action. They almost gamify the whole onboarding process. So if you take certain actions as a new user on the app, you can then gain rewards that you can then convert into off or free products. So I think that's another way of thinking about, okay, how can I get them to experience as much of the app as possible, but then reward them for it.
Let's talk about the LTV proxy. I want to keep going down the rabbit hole a little bit on this LTV proxy. I mean, I think it's so important for businesses. So many businesses are driving the business by looking in the rear view mirror. They're looking at their last 12 months revenue, like their app revenue. And those are all things that happened in the past. There's nothing about what's going to happen next, and how can you use what's happening right now or about to happen to predict what your business is going to look like in the future. And that idea from an LTV proxy is like, what is it about that day 1 login that is so crucial that you feel that is why is that such a critical metric?
Well, because what they've done is they've worked backwards. They've looked at, okay, who are our most, when we look at say new users in the first 30-day period, like who are our most valuable users, and what are the things that they do, or what are the signals that they give within those first 30 days. And then working backwards, they've looked at essentially what's the first key action that they take that basically has a big uplift on LTV, and it was login and registration rate. The other benefit is that you know who the user is, because they've given their details, and then
they're not anonymous anymore.
Exactly, and then that can then fuel remarketing activities. It might be that they're able to pull through if they then log in and they're an existing user from web. They're then able to pull in, their wish list, that maybe they've got items in their basket, and then it's easier to be able to get them to then ultimately convert to a purchase.
Got it. I mean, again, I think that's kind of gold for marketers that are looking for things that will predict future revenue. Yeah. And you mentioned about loyalty, like push opt-in rate, I think is another thing, and gamifying that. Kind of continuing on the loyalty thread, do you view the app as sort of the hub of the modern loyalty program?
Yes, definitely. And I'd say that's not even just my personal opinion. I'd say based on what I'm seeing in the market, absolutely that's the way that it's moving to. So JD Sports, for instance, they launched about, I think it was 12 to 18 months ago, they launched a loyalty program, and they created a whole separate app called JD Status that's just for loyalty. And that works in an omni-channel perspective. So it's also for anyone who's in store, they can use the app and they can collect and redeem any rewards that way as well. I'm thinking about all of the big supermarkets who are moving all of their loyalty programs to be very much app first. And
Mhm.
I think H&M was such a fantastic example. So they have something called H&M Rewards. That sits very centrally to the app. So they have throughout all of their stores all over the world, they have QR codes plastered at point of sale, in the fitting
Right.
rooms. They're really pushing every user interaction to be via the app. And so if you purchase something in store, they say, do you have the app? You show them your account, you have a unique barcode, and the person at the till will scan that. And then you've got a unique discount to use, or you might have points that you can redeem, and you'll also earn points on your purchases. The benefit of that to that retailer is all of the data, because in the past there's been this disconnect between, well, we want to know like if someone shopped in store, did they shop online, and then the apps kind of become that fantastic bridge from an omni-channel perspective.
That idea of having a representative, if you're in the store, I mean, there are a lot of store-based brands and retailers in the audience, and that idea of, as they're checking out, asking them if they've downloaded the app and showing them the QR code that's personalized to them with no risk. Even that by itself, I mean, is a pretty great idea that I see very few people doing.
I think I think there's a lot of stores I go into and they still ask for you to give, email address and
Right.
phone number. You have to read it out, and there's a whole queue behind you. And then like everyone can hear your email address, and that's just, to me now, it just feels like a slightly outdated way of doing it, and you're relying on the customer not to like put a typo in. And I think that this is also just a cleaner, more seamless experience to do it via the app.
Yeah, totally agree. The Talk to me about the consumer, and you mentioned you talked a little bit about the holdout testing that determined like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I think there are a lot of retailers and brands are in the mindset that, well, of course, my best users are using the app. They're the one that love me the most. And so as a result, it's not really an accretive channel. It's just reflecting the fact that some users are more active than others. Can you help me unpack that? Either what's correct in that statement and what's incorrect in that statement?
I think there's an element of truth to the fact that if somebody is a very loyal and repeat user of your brand, statistically they are more likely to go on and then download and use your app for sure. But I think that this is where it's on the business and the product team to create this harmony between making all of your user base, or it might not be your existing customer base, it might be that you're using it also for user acquisition, to make them aware that you have an app and drive people to the app store to then download. But then having this app experience that's offering something that is different and unique to your other channels that will drive people there. So I mentioned JD Sports. I'll use the JD Status app again. That's something that is unique to that app, and they have to download and use that in order to be part of that specific loyalty program, even if you're an offline shopper. And so in that instance, like, you might not be a long-term loyal user of JD. It might be the very first time you've walked into a store, but if you're being told, oh, actually, we'll give you X% off your first order if you download the app, you're probably going to download it. And then the way that they can keep that you on there is by, rewarding you for that purchase and having some kind of personalized incentive to bring you back. So it definitely can work as a retention hook once you've got people in there.
Yeah, and I think the idea that you're not just catering to your best customers, you're also giving your occasional customers a chance to become more engaged and to maybe discover that they have a bigger affinity to the brand with a better experience. I mean, it's not just about the promos and incentives, because anyone can give away money and points.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is where I had an interesting conversation about this with the retailer yesterday, because if you think about sort of the average frequency of purchase, maybe for a particular brand, maybe it's 2 or 3 times a year from a customer. Well, how do you keep a user engaged with and using, like, with you as a brand and on your app in between those purchase cycles? And that's where, to your point, it's not about just about promotions and discounts. It's like, what are those engagement features? And I saw that Zara this week or last week, they launched these city guides within their app, and it's just pure content around, it's cities that their stores are based in, but it's places to eat, things to do. Like, technically it's got nothing to do with them as a business, but it's very unique to the app as a content strategy. And Charlotte Tilbury, their in-app content is fantastic. So they have a whole calendar of live events and tutorials. Because of the timeliness aspect of that, that's going to drive people in, and it's different, sometimes celebrities or different makeup artists. So they're trying to keep all this almost like social, I guess, trying to like bring in that social media element of what they're trying to do, as a way again of trying to like, keep and capture people's attention when they're not buying.
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of how to use content to engage people in the app so that people come to you, for other aspects of their life. You identify this sort of kind of customer, which kind of speaks to like, how do you keep engagement up over the long term and really build that trust. I think using this as a kind of point where we get into remarketing and retention, because obviously acquisition is one thing and acquiring customers. This is a customer generally you already have. Most people aren't downloading an app that's never made a purchase or haven't heard about your brand. So they have to be aware somehow. They're probably not going to download the app store. You're like, oh, I've never heard of this company. Let me put this app on my phone. It just doesn't happen. But from a remarketing, loyalty, retention, that's where businesses really thrive, because it's very easy to, not easy, but it's easier to just acquire a user from social media or paid media. But then how do you keep them active, which kind of gets to the point of, you have your email program, you have your SMS program, and you have your app. And I think most people don't have an app. Like, there are a lot of brands that, as you pointed out, like even very large brands that are categories of brands that haven't discovered the app. So just and people have sort of very detailed campaign strategies for, Klaviyo or Salesforce Marketing Cloud or like any of these things, but not so much for the app. It's almost like they're not even in the starting gate. Why is that? And if you're in that position, what are the first questions you need to think about? Like, should I be investing more here or not?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I can say from the data that we have at AppsFlyer is that, so there's also paid remarketing for apps. And we see that about 3/4 of the paid media spend just for apps goes on remarketing, and then the remaining quarter goes on user acquisition. So exactly to your point, remarketing is a big focus. I think that you mentioned email and SMS as an example. So like if a business does have an app, I think that if you've got deep linking in place, so for instance, if you've already got the app on your phone and you get an email campaign, there's something in there that you see that you like, and you click through on that, and deep linking is in place, and it takes you to that product in the app. That in a way is remarketing to the app. You've taken them through to a channel that they have without you having to sort of class it as an app remarketing campaign. So what I would say is that if you've got deep linking in place to ensure that users who have the app are being taken back through all of your like owned media channels, you're naturally doing that anyway without really having to think about that being a specific remarketing campaign. The whole other world that opens up then is when it comes to paid remarketing for apps, and that's where like you can do that through like the self-reporting networks like Meta and Google, increasingly on TikTok too. But there's also demand side platforms, so there's a lot of personalized remarketing that you can do even with like product feeds. You've probably seen ads in like gaming apps, health and fitness apps. That's such a growing sector for remarketing as well, and I think that's something that's quite new to the world of e-commerce, because a lot of people who have typically sat within that world from a marketing perspective, it's a whole new channel that they've never worked with. Companies like Liftoff or Criteo that they might never have worked with before in that aspect. So I think just opening the eyes to the fact that there's a whole world of I think with AppsFlyer we've got something like 10,000 partners. Like that's how many that exist within the ecosystem that you could potentially run paid advertising with. So that's where there's another opportunity there to be looking at some remarketing opportunities.
Do you think that the average head of paid media at a brand fully appreciates the value or the opportunities available to them for app remarketing? outside of deep linking, obviously. I mean something that's a little bit more directed.
I'm going to say yes, but that's based on the people that I speak to um, who are running app activities, and so they know, and they work so closely with the SRNs as well, and they're also educating them on app remarketing too. So I think if you're already doing that role and you are owning the app strategy, I'd say yeah, for sure, most of them do understand the value of running paid app remarketing.
Got it. No, I guess that's good news. So, right. I would love to change gears a little bit and talk about the event you intended for Snap, because I think it speaks about consumer shopping behavior, the next generation of consumers, how they're behaving. So not just apps that you produce yourself, but other apps that the consumer is working with. Yeah. Maybe I'll just leave it at very high level. What were some of your takeaways from tell us about the event, and what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll say that their office is amazing. So if you haven't been, you have to visit. It's very on brand. Everything's in Snapchat yellow. But it was interesting. So that they invited a lot of their partners and also the brands that work with them. One thing that they wanted to announce was that they've launched something called Sponsored Snap. So they're opening up the ability for marketers to actually send messages directly from their brands to consumers. So they referenced an example that they'd had with, I think, Calvin Harris recently, and apparently got a lot of positive feedback from users of Snapchat around that, and it drove a huge uplift in, I think, Spotify listens of Calvin Harris's new song. So they're opening up an additional marketing touch point through Snap, and then they also talked about the biggest thing that came out of it was this blend between physical and digital. So Mary Portis, who's been, a long time champion of the high street, she was on a panel with Rachel Levy, who she's quite senior at Snap, and there's someone called Leona DeGraft, who I think she's VP of marketing at Levi's. And the panel randomly was moderated by Jamie Lang, but he did an amazing job. But really what was interesting that came out of it was the fact that consumers don't shop just in one singular channel anymore, and there has been definitely this change sort of post-COVID. You see this huge acceleration in digital. The feeling was like, okay, there'll be less in-store shopping, but I think the general consensus was that's not the case. We're just seeing more working together better of digital and physical, and while there might be less physical stores overall, they will be so much better in what they offer. And Mary Portis dubbed, which I love there, she said they'll become the new spiritual homes. And she talked about JD Sports have just opened a new 40,000 square foot store in Manchester. I'm thinking about IKEA as an example, their store in Oxford Circus, and they're places where it's not just a place to shop, it's a place to go and interact with the brand. It's become this community hub. They'll host events. I'm thinking about the Gymshark store on Regent Street. They host a lot of events. They've got a Joe and the Juice in there, and they have workouts in store as well. So I think there's this growing sort of feeling from Gen Z of they really want that community. And then we're seeing again this beautiful blend between the both of those.
Got it. So this sort of experiential community in the US, Dick's Sporting Goods has also done a lot with their own house of sport, where they have these huge stores that people were able to try out. If it's baseball or soccer or whatever, they're able to try out the equipment live and even play around a bit. Which you can't do on the typical aisles of a retail store. There's no space for these sorts of interactive exhibitions. Classes you meant are super important. Brands like Peloton have been doing that for a number of years, but it seems like other retailers are catching on to the fact that consumers want more than the purchase.
Definitely. This is what the point made by Levi's as well was that so they have a loyalty scheme, and they said that over half of their transactions come through users that are on the loyalty scheme. But one of the perks is that you get a discount on tailoring. So I love that they do this. So within the stores, that's a service that they offer. Which, I mean, there are companies like, I think Patagonia does this really well. I think you get basically free repairs for life on anything that you buy. And obviously that's within the store, and that's something that's going to drive you back in. And I was at Shop Talk in Barcelona last week, and I saw I think she's their chief marketing officer, but she was on a stage talking about, again, their omni-channel strategy. And she said one of the reasons why they've offered click and collect is because they want to use that as a way to drive people to actually go into the physical store and actually experience that, as well as trying to take those in-store only shoppers and trying to encourage them to use the app to actually interact with the loyalty scheme on there as well.
No, I mean, I think it sounds like there are a lot of insights that came out of it, which kind of gets into like one of the threads I wanted to pull on in this conversation is sort of like breaking free of legacy thinking. And one of the things that you mentioned about Mary Portis, she pointed out the consumers are shopping, they're interacting with the brand, I'll call it that, which is obviously at some point it's all part of the consideration user journey. Many different touch points, versus, only physical, only digital. The user expects to be remembered. But not too much, because there's obviously privacy considerations too. And so if you think about like how the average marketer has formed this mental model about what user behavior is like, I send them to a landing page. The landing page has to be good. They go to a checkout and convert. Maybe if they're interested, if they're near a store, maybe they'll walk into a store, but those customers are like more separate. Like, what are some of the, I would say, legacy thinking points that kind of hit you as you were at this event or recently that you think a lot of marketers need to break free from?
I think that there was something that a company that I worked for before that a CMO told me was, the importance of being data informed but not data led. And if you do everything sort of by the book, based on every certain number being up, like there's an element of like, there's something that came out of today that Mary Porter said, and she's like, consumers will remember how a brand made them feel. And it might be that they've walked into a store and the person that worked at the store, maybe they remembered them and maybe they recommended something based on what they've purchased before. Like that might just be that's like a really exceptional like store employee that's really gone out of their way from like a customer service perspective. But like one thing that I'm just completely just repeating everything that she mentioned today, but she was like, sometimes it gets about like really like using your intuition based on something that like feels good as an experience, and obviously still having the data there as well. But I think having this like beautiful blend of the both, because she also talked about how often marketers are really made to answer to like, the CFO, and everything has to come down to sort of they want to constantly look at ways of like being able to pull back. And she was like, but the CFO is never going to somebody in brand or marketing be like, I just want to send you like, what do you think about this? And she's like, you're always having to answer to them. And I just thought it was a really great point about there are some things that maybe you can't exactly measure. So I did a LinkedIn post this week actually about Substack. And there's a lot of brands like American Eagle who are starting to launch on Substack. And that's, again, very community, very brand driven. I have no idea what that leads to from like an income revenue perspective, but there are some things that if they've got the resource and the time to do it, that maybe it just makes sense for them as a brand.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about data informed versus data led, which is a statement I love. You also hear about sort of the art and science of marketing. And we've talked about here on the program a lot, this idea of this Renaissance CFO, which has really accelerated their involvement in almost any business you talk to. It used to be the CFO was involved in treasury management and making sure that the margins are in line, or involved in like very big capital purchases or large purchases. But it seems like the CFO is more involved in every day-to-day life of a brand and marketer, especially when every company is being forced to be more efficient. How does a marketer, I guess, open up a little breathing room in an environment like that? Let's call it that. Are there any tips or advice that you've seen work well?
That's such a good question. I think that if you can try or test anything that doesn't cost any money,
Right.
then you don't have to go to the CFO to ask for budget.
Right.
And then if there's a way that you are able to somehow A/B test that or measure it
Yeah.
over a period of time to show that it's delivered some kind of value.
Yeah.
Yes,
I've
but I
always
think
found like painted door tests. Like you put something on the site, you're like, a user would do this, and this is a value you get. Are you interested in signing up? And then if you can show that, like, look, 20% of our users clicked here, can we invest in this tool to then deliver some value?
yeah,
Could be a little bit of a, I don't say fake it before you make it, but
it's like kind of an MVP approach to something.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you can, if the CFO doesn't want you to spend no more than X dollars, like, well, what can we do as cheaply as possible to prove that this is worth investing in further?
Yeah.
Which then probably also helps the CFO because they're worried about like these big bang failures, right? You invest in something in a year and just turns out it wasn't a good idea. And frankly, maybe the CFO had a point. You should have tested it more cheaply, which is part of your advice.
I have seen a few businesses. I mean, I don't know if that's the case now because exactly to your point, I think there is a lot more scrutiny over budget. But some businesses they reserved, I don't know, like 5 or 10% of their budget for like failures for tests, to test things and try them. And then if something worked, then they'd move that into like their BAU campaigns. I don't know how much that happens now, but I know a few brands a few years ago that is something that they would do.
It's another good reminder, and I think framing, because so often businesses, and I've been in them myself, you go in these meetings and you're debating the ROI of every single thing, no matter how big or small. And so just putting different types of initiatives into different buckets, like this is our test and learn bucket. Stop freaking talking to me about the ROI. Like, who cares? It could fail. It's going to be cheap. We'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That idea to like let yourself fail, like give yourself permission to fail, and it just creates a better organization for learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else? I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation. I did want to end on one thing related to apps, and like from an org ownership point of view, I think so many people have apps sort of buried in their IT org. Is there a cross-functional group that you think is a better owner of the app strategy at a brand? Or how do you think about ownership?
Yes, I'm seeing a real divide between for some businesses, they have people in roles doing it sort of at I call it the side of the desk job. Like they might be a head of performance marketing across web, and then like, oh, can you also look after app?
I just need to pause this statement, the side of the desk job. Like, I need to borrow that. Thank you.
But it is so true, and then it's like, and it's really hard for that person you can't do everything really well, and you want somebody who's really an expert within that space. And I've seen it work best when you do have somebody who is head of mobile or head of app for a brand, and that's their entire remit. And that includes, I mean, in itself, it can be quite a big remit because you might also be responsible for obviously owned media and paid media and ASO. You might have to work then cross-functionally with the product team. I'll not say never, but I rarely see somebody look after both marketing and the product experience as well, unless they're a startup or they're an app-only business. So I know there's like some rental platforms like Hair or Buy Rotation, and they're just an app. They don't have a transactional website, and they've started as an app. So yeah, I think it's worked best when somebody's in like a head of app marketing role, and then they have a really tight relationship with the head of product for app, and they work very cross-functionally. They have some crossover of KPIs because you can be the best marketer in the world, but if you're driving users through to an app that has a really poor experience, there's only so much that you can do. So I think that's where it works best. You've got this harmony across both. And I see a lot of businesses, they'll lean quite heavily on their agencies too to help them. And sometimes that can be a really good thing because they work with so many clients, they've got a good experience within the app space as well.
Yeah, and I still see some organizations struggling with this sort of like buy, build, outsource for apps generally. Are you seeing any trends changing there?
When it comes to app, I think if somebody's just getting into the space now, I've noticed they do tend to initially outsource it, and then eventually they'll start to bring it in. I think also because there's probably some nervousness around from a senior level around sort of the investment, because obviously if they're starting from new, it's quite a heavy resource and financial investment. So I think they're trying to think, okay, how can we do this on a smaller scale to begin with?
And do you think that, I mean, clearly it's a way to get started fast. Do you think it's smart? I mean, for instance, like you don't think that way about your website. Like most people are on these days, like unless you're like, there are a lot of people on custom platforms that maybe shouldn't be on custom platforms. But if you're starting a website from scratch, you're probably going to choose one of the out of the box providers, and it's going to be a cloud-based service, and you can customize it, but it's still based on some modern framework. Do you think that most people aren't thinking about their apps a certain way? They're thinking about like, how can we own this code? And it sounds like a bad idea for most people to become app developers.
I think that, well, what we're also seeing is that a lot of retailers, even if they do own the development in-house, they have what we call a hybrid app. So it's a wraparound of the mobile site. And there's an extent of like maybe 70% of the app is native, but then I'd say then things like the checkout experience are actually just a mobile web view housed within the app. And then that again is kind of like a workaround, but in an ideal situation, you would want it all to be fully native so that you've got like truly unique and very optimized app experience that does feel, you don't want it to feel like web, you want it to feel different and have all of the unique features that can come with that.
Got it. And I think this is all super valuable if I think from an execution point of view. As people, I would love to like wrap the conversation sort of going back to the consumer a little bit. And as you think about if you're a company that has sort of let your app strategy sort of languish for too long, like is there a takeaway from a recent meeting or something you can share that maybe would encourage someone to like, maybe we should relook at this, start thinking about our app in a new way, for instance, your new user journey or any of the great tips that you shared kind of along the way?
I would say if anything should give any brand or retailer a kick, look at Temu, because they are very app first in what they do. And they last year were the number one downloaded shopping app in most countries globally. And I think every retailer I've spoken to is terrified of them. And I think that, you need to be in a space where, if you don't have an app or you're not putting any focus on it, you're potentially losing market share and users to the likes of Temu and Shein. And even if you think, no, our customer doesn't shop on Temu and Shein, I spoke to a luxury retailer last week, and even they're worried because people have only got a certain amount of disposable income, and there's now this culture, there's this trend, it's basically like, a mini treat yourself, and people like to buy small cheap things, dupes, and people are getting targeted so heavily by them that you kind of can't ignore them. People are curious, like, I want to try it out. So I think, if you're in the shopping space, you are potentially losing some of that that wallet share to the likes of Temu if you're not investing in your app today. Got it.
I mean, so, looking at the big players, who's rising in the App Store, Temu, especially at least before in the US, before the tariffs, it was rising. Now it's dropping a bit, but Europe is clearly a bit of a different market. And I would say regardless, the fact that they got there shows the value of engaging users and how to give them an experience that they'll remember.
Yeah, exactly.
So I appreciate the chat today, Sue. Thank you for coming on.
Oh no, thank you for having me. Thanks for your great questions.
All right, thank you so much.